I have started a couple of books in the past, and they all tend to come back to my personal story and how what I've gone through relates or why I was even drawn to do what I did because of my origin story. And um, I do have one book that is out. It was self-published, and the intro is about me, and it touches on some of my personal story, but it was rewritten and edited. And it was funny. I was listening to you yesterday, and I did kind of start editing out some of the more things that I wanted to take to my grave. So, um, but when I speak, and I speak often, there are times when I will say my story out loud, and it tends to have a pretty decent impact. Early on, I was sexually abused multiple times, 4 that I can remember. I think because I was abandoned by my mother, I was drawn to please adults, which set me up to be sexually abused. And then we were also incredibly poor. So came from a very low socioeconomic background. My father was an alcoholic. He was depressed. He was incredibly um, racist and homophobic and all the things you think about the people that I kind of rail against. I'm also gay, which growing up in a very small town was problematic. I had the sexual abuse. Then I was also incredibly poor and I didn't have a lot of options. Um, so that's my origin story. What I did with it is the story, right? Um, and I have gone on to be a traveling musician. I've been in law enforcement. I was a parole officer. I've been in nonprofits for most of my life, whether it's animals, children, or elderly. Typically, the most vulnerable populations on the planet is where I'm drawn. And then I created this social equity assessment method for commercial real estate. And I think that could be the culmination of my origin story, what I'm drawn to, my acquired skills kind of all intersecting to be the one story. Now, I have written the social equity standard, which is a more technical document, more research based. It's about 434 pages. And I thought, well, what if I could take how to do social equity, how to apply social equity in your business, or whether it's a real estate project or you sell widgets, how do you incorporate that equitable process, but weave in the story? So, kind of why I even was led to do this and why it's important. And those are just some of my some of my thoughts. And I've been following you for a while. You had a video at one point talking about how to pull out the story and the voice and the personality. And I think that's what I'm missing because I am afraid to just state it in the way that I state things, which is quite robotic. My wife actually calls me a robot because I'm just I process things on the inside, but you'd never know it on my face. And so sometimes when I try to express things that are coming from my emotional infrastructure, which is not as developed as my intellect, it comes out flat, a bit aphasic, um, a little apathetic, and without emotion. And so sometimes I tend to just be blunt, and that's not always the way to get it across. I was sexually abused. That's an uncomfortable and awkward conversation to have. So that's where I am.
You're in a great place. And the reason why I say that is a part of my function is not necessarily to provide new words to express old feelings, but to provide confirmation that the way you've just expressed something is the way you write it. And so if you used your book, in your book, and you simply said, I can be absent of emotion, I can be a bit pedantic in my expression, a bit terse in my expression. And that's not really the way I want to come across because I feel deeply, but I present robotically. If you actually say that, you actually become more emotional. The reader actually assesses. And so what happens, Rainey, is, and I was talking about this yesterday, I flirted with this a little bit, but I didn't have time to go into it. What we need to say is always what we say when we're trying to express that we don't know how to say it.
Hmm.
And so
Interesting.
it is not to all of a sudden become emotional and change the inner workings of your character, and now you cry at a drop of a handkerchief. That's not it. It is stating, I'm not the most emotional person, but I feel these concepts, these ideas, these experiences so deeply. I just have never learned how to say it as articulate or as meaningful as some people I listen to. And so I threatened not to even write about this. I flirted with just leaving this alone, but I'm going to try anyway. So when you say that on paper, instead of saying that as you're writing it and then trying to go across a bridge to refine it, make it sophisticated, and then write down the edited version that has no power, it's more emotional, more emotive, and actually more engaging to tell the reader, I don't have the power. And ironically, that gives you the power
Hmm. Wow.
because
That's interesting.
it is the authenticity, the honesty. It is not the learned nature of knowing the skill of how to do everything as much as it is being able to admit I have some decent thoughts. I have some very bad experiences, and I think it could help someone. I think the light of my failures can be the light to bring you out of yours. When you say this and admit your weaknesses, they're no longer weaknesses. You know what they are? It's like, man, this is one honest woman, and I feel the same way she does. And because she took a chance to do it, I think I'm going to tell my story too. The purpose of your story is so other people understand theirs, not for us to know who you are. Each page a mirror. For us to understand, give you the credit for showing us us.